But let's get into our way too early top 5 list with our special guest, Mark Childress from The Roar. Mark, I wanted to start off with you since you're the guest. We're going to start off with our number one team, and I'm hoping that your number one team is the same number one team that Alan and I have. But going into the 2020 season, now looking back over the 2019 season, looking at what players have declared for the NFL draft, what players ended up staying for their senior year, who is your preseason number one way too early poll?
Okay, so I am looking this through the lens of when we get to the end of the regular season next year, who do I think is going to be the number one team in the country? Okay, so I am going to give it that caveat at the beginning. I believe going into the college football playoffs in 2020 that Alabama will be the number one team in the country. And again, I'm looking at it through the lens that we saw Clemson viewed through this year, right? I mean, Clemson was number 3 in the college football playoffs this year because they, I'm using air quotes, didn't play anybody, didn't have the best out-of-conference schedule. They do have Notre Dame on the schedule next year. I've got Clemson a little bit further down in my preseason top 5 for next year, but I think Alabama rights the ship. They've got enough folks coming back. They've got Southern Cal is really the only out-of-conference team that they've got to worry about next year. LSU is going to be down next year. You know, they seem to alternate years beating or losing to Auburn, so I feel like they'll take Auburn down next year. That's really all that they've got to worry about is LSU and Auburn on their schedule and a matchup with Georgia, who I don't think is going to be all that great. I think Alabama will be the number one team going into the college football playoffs next year.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you in that sense. If you really look at it, I know that I want to pick Clemson, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I am picking Clemson to be number one. But realistically speaking, outside of my heart, outside of the orange-colored glasses, I can see the College Football Playoff Committee and the AP voters and the coaches poll voters doing the same thing they did to Clemson as they did last year and saying, oh, you don't play anybody, Florida State's down, Louisville's still rebuilding. Wake Forest is no good. Boston College is no good. Who are they going to beat? They're going to probably, let's say they face Virginia Tech. Again, it could very easily be 25th ranked Virginia Tech. And so Clemson would have really no good wins in that sense. And so will they stay at number one? If they are number one, it's hard to say. I think that in this sense, I want to say Clemson will be number one. I hope that this past season has kind of maybe opened the eyes for the Clemson staff and said, hey, maybe we don't need to go so quickly to our fifth string guys. Maybe we need to hold some people in a little bit longer, score a couple more points, show our dominance, and hey, not only that, but keep that cohesion together, keep that unity of the starters together. That I think sometimes bit Clemson on the bad end because of Trevor Lawrence or whoever not really having a lot of experience with each other, or at least a full 4 quarters of experience with each other. But Alan, what you got for number one?
Well, first of all, I want to say I actually kind of thought this the opposite from Mark. I was actually kind of going into my preseason top 4, like before anybody plays a game, who do I have as far as my top teams in the country? I have Clemson there. I think their biggest question mark going into next year is, the offensive line and defensive back. And rightfully so. I mean, they lost 4 seniors across the offensive line. Losing 4 seniors across an offensive line is enough to cripple a lot of teams. But Clemson, the reason they play these backups, is because they want to get them ready when their time comes. And I think that's going to be a big help come next year. I think the fact that we have Travis Etienne returning, we have Trevor Lawrence returning. Okay, I know Trevor Lawrence kind of went out on a bad note this year, but they all know he's still Trevor Lawrence, okay? And we still have some good receivers to play with when you have an Etienne and you have a number 1 recruiting class come in, or what may end up being a 2 or 3 recruiting class, whatever. These guys are the defense should be a little bit better, especially across the line. I think you'll see a lot more 4-man front next year. And Venable's obviously going to make do with whatever he has and get the best out of it for sure. But with all those weapons, potential superstars, I expect Clemson to be right back in the playoff. And, I think the fact that they're going to have Notre Dame on their schedule, who's going to be ranked highly because Notre Dame always is, I think that's going to help us as well, assuming, of course, Clemson wins that game. And I personally don't believe Clemson cares one bit about blowing teams out more than they have and leaving those starters in longer. I think Clemson is going to do what Clemson does. Now, if they were to lose an early game and think, you know what, if we want to make it back to these playoffs, if they lose at Notre Dame, then they may start leaving somebody in there because they're going to have to. But unless they get the L on their schedule, they're going to keep doing what they do and rotate those players and have them ready so that they're going to be ready for next year.
Obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in that sense, I mean, going to the national championship, 4 out of the last 5 years, winning 2 out of 4 is not a bad scenario for the Tigers again going into this year. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you look at my number 2, kind of to piggyback off of what Mark said, Mark had Alabama number 1. I put Alabama number 2. You've got Najee Harris coming back, Devonta Smith coming back. Mac Jones showed he's more than capable of being a good quarterback. And then they've got a dynamic guy, true freshman Bryce Young, who battled it out with DJ Uiagalelei for that top spot in the the quarterback position. And so I think that Alabama is going to have, really maybe they might have a quarterback battle, but even if they don't, Mac Jones is going to be able to service the team well. And like I said, they've got the wide receivers there. Waddle's still going to be there. They do lose Jerry Jeudy, but I think Alabama's going to be right back there. And I know, Alan, I think you said for your number 2 was Alabama as well.
Yeah, I have Alabama at number 2 for all the reasons you stated. I'd like to give you a big spiel and tell you something that you didn't know, but you pretty much took every single one of my talking points there. So I think Alabama's going to be right back in it, and I see them as taking over the West again. I have them at number 2.
So, Mark, give us your number 2 and number 3.
Yeah, so for me, and again, it looks like I looked at this a little bit differently than you guys, but I think that's okay. I think Ohio State is the number 2 team in the country. And again, the lens I'm looking at it as, where do I feel like these teams will be ranked going into the college football playoffs next year? Ohio State's got an intriguing game out of conference at Oregon in the second week of the season. I think Oregon's definitely going to take a step back, losing their star QB and so much on the defensive or on the offensive line, and should be an easy win for Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to cruise next year in a Big 12 that's not going to be quite as good as it was this year. And then I've got Clemson in there at number 3. I think you guys are making a lot of points, but I will say this. I don't think Dabo and the staff is going to make any changes at all on the way that they play their players. They're going to keep on playing the backups. They're going to keep on playing the second and third strings. I don't think they're going to try to leave anybody in there longer to pump up their Heisman numbers for EPN or for Trevor Lawrence, or to show the committee that they're actually a little bit better than people think that they are. I don't think they're worried about anybody except Clemson. I think they'll do the exact same thing that they did last year. Again, I think they're a fantastic team. I think it's going to be a coin flip between those top 3 teams as far as who gets ranked number 1 going into the college football playoffs next year. But it's Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3 for me.
And really, not much different for me. Just a little bit, just kind of swapped around there. I have Clemson, Alabama, and then Ohio State. Ryan Day did a great job in his first year. That Ohio State team was just a very difficult game for Clemson. I think that was something that really wasn't talked about a lot. But Clemson played World War III in that PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, and then had to turn around and watch LSU basically sit on the sidelines in the fourth quarter. And that was something that Clemson was able to do last year. Mm-hmm. And while Alabama was sitting here fighting out Kyler Murray's trying to claw his way back into the game, I think Clemson took advantage of it last year and was able to just dominate Alabama. But I think LSU did the same for Clemson as well. Those guys, they said they were beat up and bruised. They loved it. They thrived off of it. But there's no denying that it was definitely something that might have taken a little more than 2 weeks to recover from that beating. But Clemson was able to get away from it. And I think Ohio State's going to be there again, even though they lose J.K. Dobbins. You've got Justin Fields coming back for round 2. And Ohio State recruits great. So they're going to get more big-time recruits. They do lose Chase Young and Jeffrey Okunda, but they're going to continue to reload, much like Alabama's of the world, much like Clemson's of the world now. Thankfully, we can say that as Tiger fans, that Clemson just reloads. Clemson's definitely going to do that on the defensive line. But I've got Ohio State. And then for me, my number 4, and I know, Mark, when I was on your show in the studio, Paul called in and he just got all over me for picking this team. And then I came back and I said, well, if I can't pick this team, then I'm going to pick LSU. But I picked Georgia last year to do well. And then Paul called in and jumped all over me for picking Georgia. So then I said, well, I really think Coach O has got some things going with that recruiting class, and he's a great coach. So I would give LSU, and John and Mark agreed with me on the episode there. But again, I mean, tell me who's not going to be there other than Georgia. I mean, I guess you could say Florida, but in the sense that Wisconsin loses their starting running back, Penn State loses their go-to wide receiver, Oregon loses their quarterback. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not crazy to say two SEC teams are going to be up there. And for me, I don't see it being Florida. It can't be two people from the West. So I've got to go with Georgia. I know a lot. I know I'm going to get beat up about it. But Alan, what do you got?
Well, actually, I get to go back and tell you my number 3 because, I didn't get to tell you my number 3. So I'm picking Ohio State, man. Me and you are on the same page here. I have Alabama, or I have Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. That's my top 3 as well. I think the fact that, this is a quarterback game, and the fact they have Justin Fields automatically puts them up there by default. They lost a lot of production, obviously, on offense, but with his ability to make and extend plays, I feel like they can make do, with all the 4- and 5-star backups they have that are just going to kind of move into those positions for sure. Losing Heisman contender Chase Young, like you said, that's going to hurt a little bit on defense, but the Buckeyes always seem to find that next great defensive end. And I have no doubt they'll probably do the same thing this year. They'll have a little competition in the East, as I'll get to in just one second, but they'll be a factor again. Speaking of my number 4, I actually have Penn State as my number 4. I didn't think a lot of people would have that. They return an awful lot of talent on offense. I know you said they lost their receiver, but again, they still have their quarterback. They got talented running backs, and they have quarterback Sean Clifford coming back. I think that's a big deal. They've recruited well under James Franklin, and that's no surprise. I think the only surprise is whether he's following the rules to get those recruits. But you know what? It's all good. It's the James Franklin that college football loves, right? So, he's kind of in the news for the wrong reason right now, which he's accustomed to. He's being sued, for the hazing rituals and all those kind of things. But hey, if nothing crazy comes from all that, assuming he is the coach and everything is just kind of hunky-dory over there in Penn State come season time, I think they can, compete with or beat Ohio State. They get Ohio State coming to Happy Valley this year as well. So a good offense led by a linebacker, on defense, Micah Parsons. I love Micah Parsons. I think he's just an all-American type of player. Clemson actually recruited him when he was a 5-star defensive end. And he goes to Penn State, ends up transitioning to linebacker, and he's just all over the place, killing people. So I think good offense, returning quarterback, a lot of good running backs, and a decent defense. I think they can make some noise, and I'm going to have them up there at number 4.
It's not a successful season unless you're being sued, Alan. It just happens to be that James Franklin is being sued for hazing, and Dabo Swinney, I believe, he got threatened with a lawsuit over praying. But, completely different scenarios there. But, hey, that's what successful coaches do. They get a little bit in trouble with the law there, even though our coach is a lot different than what you're speaking of. But, Mark, what you got? I believe I think we're at 4 and 5 for you.
Yeah, so let me read you guys a schedule for next year, and it's a schedule of my number 4 team, okay? Eastern Washington, Kentucky, South Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Missouri, New Mexico State, Florida State. And then they've got games against Georgia and LSU. Going with the Florida Gators at number 4. Who can literally just arrive on a bus and win 10 games next year, right? So then they've got LSU at home, and they've got Georgia in Jacksonville. I think something's broken in that Georgia program. I really do. I did not like the fact that so many players sat out the bowl game. I did not like what Kirby Smart said after the game, where some of his players didn't seem to be prioritizing the team as much as they were prioritizing themselves. You're losing Jake Fromm. You're losing DeAndre Swift. You're losing a bunch on the defensive side as well. I just think Georgia's going to take a step back next year. I think they're going to lose to Alabama. I don't think LSU is going to be near as good next year. So Florida is literally, to me, got to find a way to beat LSU at home and or Georgia in Jacksonville. And they're going to be an 11-1 team, and they're going to be going to the SEC championship game against Alabama. So I think that the Florida Gators, again, you've got to have 2. I think what you said, Morgan, makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's going to be 2 SEC teams in the top 5 in just about every possible scenario out there, unless things just get crazy. I'm going to go with the Florida Gators as that second team this year. And then number 5, flip a coin. I like the Penn State pick, Allen. I'm going for the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma doesn't have the toughest schedule next year. And, their tougher games come a little bit earlier on in the schedule. So they've got Tennessee, which could be an interesting one, but they play Texas on October, right? That's really their toughest game of the season. And even if they were to drop that game to Texas on October 10th, it's early enough in the year, I think, that they rally back in there and kind of do what Oklahoma seems to always do, which is backdoor their way into the college football playoff there on that last weekend and get in. So I've got Oklahoma as my number 5 team.
And Alan, finish us up with your last couple of teams there.
Yeah, I'm going to give you my number 5. Actually, Mark, I agree with you a lot on Florida. It took a lot for me to leave them off this list. I kind of thought nobody would be really thinking about them, but I like where you're going with that. My number 5, I know they lost their quarterback. I have Oregon actually there right now. They're coming off a great Rose Bowl victory. They returned 9 starters on a pretty nasty defense as is, which is significant, talking about how good they were this past year. They'll begin the year, obviously, with some people marking their defense as one of, if not the best in the country, I think. A lot of times the Pac-12 teams don't get that kind of love. But look, it's no small task to replace a Justin Herbert for sure. But one of the main reasons I have them at number 5, besides that defense, is the fact that they recruit well, and I think they're going to land a quality transfer. It seems like all the quarterbacks on God's green earth are transferring right now, trying to get a better position. Jamie Newman obviously ended up at Georgia. I think they're going to land a transfer there, but it's Oregon. People are going to want to play in that offense. So, I think, most people think offense when they think of the Ducks, aside from uniforms, of course. But the defense is going to be no slouch this year for sure, as they have the chance to be a Pac-12 contender and make them a contender for the playoffs, which is something they hadn't done very much. So I'm going to take Oregon at number 5.
And I mean, I really don't disagree with what you guys are saying for sure. I know you guys, like I said, I knew I was going to get kind of some flack for picking Georgia, just like I did last year. And I know that they got a lot of things going on outside of the football field. But I mean, they got Jamie Newman, as you said, to me, couldn't hit the targets in big games, and I think Jamie Newman's going to be able to do that. They just picked up Todd Monken, who's going to be able to kind of speed up the offense. It might put a lot of stress on that Georgia defense because they're not going to be on the time. They're not going to win time of possession by any means with this new offensive coordinator. He's going to get on the field and off the field, kind of like a Chad Morris type guy. So, but I really see Jamie Newman flourishing in that sense. I'd like to see him be successful. I mean, this is an ACC transplant over there. It'd be interesting to see what he can do in the SEC. I do really like Kyle Trask for sure. I think he's way better than Felipe Franks, who actually somebody sent me this that he transferred to, I believe, Arkansas, which I didn't know
correct.
that. But that is a very interesting thing. I mean, if you look at the transfer portal right now, if you printed it out, it'd be like 35 pages long with 10 players per page. It's amazing how many people are trying to find a new home for the 2020 season. But for me, again, Georgia, number 4. Oklahoma, I agree with Mark Childress in that sense that Oklahoma, get this, Lincoln Riley's first true freshman recruit to be the quarterback. I'm not true freshman, he's a sophomore, but it's his first recruit to ever be his quarterback. Every quarterback he's had so far in Oklahoma has been a transfer that he didn't recruit. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. How will Spencer Rattler do in that system? Well, we know it's a Heisman creating system, and that Lincoln Riley's going to he's probably going to flourish in that sense as well. I hear a lot of people saying a lot of big things about Rattler and how great he's going to be, a big 5-star guy that's just going to destroy defenses. Well, what's left of defenses, or what is mustard of defenses in the Big 12? But I think Oklahoma's going to be there again. And really, like I said, for me, I thought about Penn State, but KJ Hamler's gone. I thought about Wisconsin. Jonathan Taylor's gone. I thought about Oregon, but Justin Herbert's gone. So for me, only team that I really feel like I could put in there would be, like what you guys said, was Florida and the Gators. I think they have a chance to take it over in Jacksonville and become that team. I know you don't like to say anything about Georgia because your time in Atlanta there, Mark. But I think that even though all the things going off the field, I think with the quarterback they have, like Alan said, having a good quarterback is half the battle, and I think they definitely have one for sure.